let's go ahead and move on to this rebuttal, because this is going to be really interesting here too. We'll have to see what Terry has to say. She's been talking about Terry in here. And thank y'all for liking the video too. Let's see what Terry has to say in response to the defense.
It's interesting to sit there and listen to all that and realize she's got a...
She did a great job.
She's trying to find anything she can pick apart in the state's case, of course. She went through each witness and tried to find anything that they did wrong, any little tiny mistake. She spent a lot of time talking about Shirley Bass. And she ignored the strongest and the most important piece of evidence in this entire case. The words of her own client. The words of her own client. The first words that came out of his mouth when the deputies come in there to this horrific scene. She completely ignored that, ladies and gentlemen. She completely did. And in fact, I guess because she's ignoring it so hard, she didn't even get right what he said. He never said he was cleaning the gun. He said he was removing the magazine. That's how much she's ignored it, is that she didn't even get the words he said right. Listen to the tape. Listen to what he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. I wrote down the quote exactly. He never said anything about cleaning the gun.
Doesn't make sense.
She's not listening to those words because she doesn't want you to listen to those words.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper argument.
Sustained.
Those words are the strongest and most compelling piece of evidence in this entire case. She wants to tell you, well, that doesn't tell you who shot that gun. You know who tells you who shot that gun? He tells you who shot that gun.
Doesn't make him guilty.
Bass tells you who shot that gun. He said, I did it.
If anything, that makes him less guilty.
Deputies and those detectives began an investigation believing that man said it was an accident. So they want to look and see what's going on.
Who's going to say, yeah, it was me. I shot my kids. Sorry, guys. All right, here you go. Let's go. It doesn't make any sense. Again,
and then it comes to like, this couldn't possibly be an accident with 5 shots. But he admitted it was him. And one of the last things Mr. Lemmer said something to
why would he
like,
talk to the police at all?
Who is he protecting? Well, where's there any evidence he's protecting anybody?
He's either protecting himself,
I can tell you
Shirley, or his son.
Himself.
We don't know that.
Those words, that lie, was protecting himself. He's caught. Hand in the cookie jar. Children shot. He's in the house. Murder weapons in his drawer. He's holding the baby. What does he say? It was an accident. That's the first lie he could come up with, right? You couldn't blame Shirley. We don't even know Shirley was outside. He said Shirley was in her room. Shirley wasn't in that room, for sure. And why would he protect Shirley? Why would he protect Shirley Bass if she shot her children? He wouldn't do that. You know, earlier in the night, he was over there confronting her about whether she'd been drinking.
I agree. I don't think it's Shirley either.
Protect her? That common sense says to you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's not going to happen.
I agree.
No. He came up. He knew he was caught. He came up with the first lie he could think of. It was an accidental discharge. And they're like, wow, for both of them? Yeah. Yeah. I was taking out my magazine and it went off. But she wants you to ignore that. She barely even talked about it.
Objection, Your Honor. Improper argument and shifting the burden.
Improper argument sustained.
That is the strongest piece of evidence in this case. You can rely on that evidence and that evidence alone. That's an admission, ladies and gentlemen. He admitted to those deputies that he fired that weapon. Came up with a ridiculous excuse, but he admitted it. But he admitted it, leaving just enough truthful nuggets in it. Because he couldn't quite figure out the right way to lie. So that's what he says. Accidental discharge. Okay, that's the first thing he says. I was trying to take out the magazine and it went off. Right? They was both in bed. He said that. They was both in bed. No one told him where they were or what was going on or where they'd been shot. That's actually true. They were both in bed. How did he know that? How did he know they were both in bed? Because he's the one who pulled the trigger. They was both in bed. Physical evidence shows they were both shot in that bed. I was in their room. Now he even puts the room where they were shot. He's got the bed, the room. That's all true. So he's mixed in his lie with a little truth.
Yeah, I'm not
I was
buying it.
in their room. They was both in bed. Where was Shirley? She was in her room.
I'm not buying it at all.
Again, those are his words, not my words. Not words by the Corporal Gabot, not words from Anna Cox, not words from Jennifer McElwain, not words from any of those people. Those are the words of the defendant, the man right there. So every time Ms. Schlemmer says, well, that doesn't tell you who shot the gun. Well, I'll tell you who told you who shot the gun. He did. So Ms. Schlemmer said, he said, clean gun. That's not true. Another thing, and again, you need to rely on your own memory of the evidence. You need to rely on the evidence that you take back there with you. But she pulled that picture out to show the drawer open and the gun being. Watch the video camera of the body-worn camera of Daniel Jones when he goes in to clear that room. That drawer where that gun is found is almost completely closed. It may be open about this much. It is clear that they opened it more to put the markers on there. So yes, in fact, the defendant did take that gun after his two children were shot in the head, and rather than lend aid or render aid to them, he took that gun and he walked through that house while his children were bleeding out in their beds, took the time to do that, removed the magazine. Oh, again, a little nugget of truth thrown in there with that lie. I was taking out the magazine. Yeah, he did take out the magazine. Why, when your children have just been shot in the head, are you taking the time to walk down the hallway, go into your bedroom, pull out the magazine, place the gun down in there with the magazine, and close the drawer? Does that make any sense to you, ladies and gentlemen?
Nope, it sure doesn't. It sure does not.
So that was the way he did that lie, but producing enough nuggets of truth that his statements actually had some truth in them. And only the only person, the shooter, would know what those statements were. Where they were shot is huge. We only know that from Anna Cox because Anna Cox, who's the bloodstain expert who you heard from, was able to tell you that based on the bloodstain pattern, there was only one place these two children were shot, and that was in that bed, in that little corner up there. They were both shot in the head, up in that northwest corner of the bed. And he knew that. They was in bed. He knew that scene. He knew where they were. I mean, that's as close to a confession as you're going to get, ladies and gentlemen. He's actually giving you details about the crime, the location, specific enough to where they were in the bed. The shooter would know that. The person who pulled the trigger would know that. That is the strongest and most compelling evidence in this case. And to ignore that, because the medical examiner wrote upward trajectory instead of downward trajectory, or the vice versa, would be an injustice. Don't lose sight of the forest through the trees. Don't ignore the strongest and most compelling evidence of this case, because the crime scene investigator wrote bottom bunk instead of top bunk. She made a mistake. So not only do his words follow along with the evidence perfectly, other than the accident, that's the part he didn't want to admit. He didn't want to admit his intent. That was an accident.
Object, Your Honor, comment on silence.
Overruled.
So instead of saying his intent, which was to kill those kids, it came out as, oh, it's an accident. But on top of that, the physical evidence also corresponds with that. The location, just where he said they were. Where they were shot, just where he said they were. His DNA is on the gun. He knew where that gun was. They'd be like, where's the gun? Where's the gun? It's on the dresser. Well, it's in the dresser. He knew. How did he know? Because he put it in there. Who does that? A man with a guilty conscience. A man who's trying to hide away the murder weapon. That's who does that.
What?
If this had been an accident, if someone else had done it, do you think he would take the time or bother to go and put the gun away? No, of course not. And it's no coincidence that gun was next to his wallet, because that's his gun. And you stuck it down in there. The shots were from off the bed. That's clear. If the shots to Jayla were from a person on the bed, meaning JJ, there would have been stiffing, ladies and gentlemen. There's no way that he would not have been shot within 12 inches, she would not have been shot within 12 inches. And there would have been some evidence of a close range fire if JJ had fired that gun. There would have been evidence of a close range fire. That gun was fired from off the bed, at least 2 feet away. Who could have done that? Not JJ. Oh, I know who could have done it, the man who admitted that he did it.
Not buying it.
Ms. Schlemmer says, she knows me, she knows I'm going to talk about transfer. Of course I'm going to talk about transfer DNA. And yes, it is a very heavy statistic, so I have no doubt that JJ touched that gun, or that some fluids from JJ in some manner or another transferred from the hands of that man onto that trigger and grip. And remember, when she says trigger grip, she swabs the entire grip where you hold the gun as well as the trigger. So it could have come from the trigger, or the grip, it could have come from the trigger, or trigger could come from anywhere. But yes, those transfer DNA. Now, possibly, and as we know, one of these shots goes awry. 5 shots were fired, 4 hit their target, 1 went awry. It went into the wall, and into the bathroom. How could that maybe have happened? Maybe JJ, in an attempt to save his life, grabs the gun and pushes it away from his head, from them. And the gun goes up and shoots away from him. Maybe JJ did grab that gun. Maybe it was transferred DNA. But there's no evidence that JJ would have shot this gun. He's an 8-year-old boy. No evidence he had any animosity with his sister, any issues with his sister. Those shots were targeted. But also remember, he shot himself. Are we to suggest that he shot his sister 3 times, then shot into the wall, and then shot himself in the head? Oh, and hit his hand at the same time? He didn't shoot that gun. That's silly. It's silly to believe that he would shoot his sister and then shoot himself. And that just makes no sense, ladies and gentlemen. No sense. So yes, this DNA was on there, but it's easily explained. You know whose DNA is not on there? The person Ms. Schlemmer talked about the most in the first half of her closing, Shirley Bass. She is excluded from the grip and trigger. Excluded. She did not hold that gun that night.
Well,
if she had held that gun and fired those shots, you better believe some of her DNA would be on that gun. She did not have that gun. There's zero physical evidence whatsoever that suggests Shirley Bass did this. And I know that you all may be sitting here wondering, well, we didn't get to hear from Shirley. I wonder what she said. Well, I'm going to tell you something right now. You did hear from Shirley. All of you did. You heard from her in that 911 call.
yeah, we heard her not answer questions.
Very hard to listen to that call. Listen to it, compare it with the video we have of her outside DeQuan Evans' apartment. Listen to how her voice changes, timeline, and everything, because I'm going to suggest to you what happens. And you watch this, and you will see that this is in fact what happens. And listen to the audio carefully, and you will hear this. First of all, notice that when she is outside, the very first time she's outside, and you need to watch the video very closely, and it's hard to see sometimes. But if you watch it enough times, you will know where the door is to the Bass household. You will see her come out, and she comes out at 20:21:15. Which is 10:21. So she comes out a while before she ends up at DeQuan Evans' house. And watch her out there. You'll see her in the parking lot, and she's kind of walking like this, and then she kind of walks another way, and then you'll see her walking this way before she ever comes to the area where DeQuan Evans is. She's out of that house for a while.
Why? What's she doing out there?
So what does she say when she's on that phone call? You hear her. She's frantic. She's terrified. She can't believe what's going on. She knows there were gunshots in her house. She says, someone shot my whole family. She's petrified. She doesn't know what's going on. She knows there were gunshots. And then she says, I don't know what happened in this house. She doesn't know. She didn't see it. She tells you right there, I don't know what happened in this house. She knows there were gunshots in her house, and she's scared for the safety of her family, but she says, I don't know what happened in this house, but she is scared. You can hear that in her voice. But she's not super confrontational, right? You can just hear she's like scared, and she's not making a lot of sense when she talks. But then watch on the video. She has that phone for about 2 minutes and 20 seconds or so, 2 minutes, 40 seconds, and you'll see she starts walking back into the parking lot, and she heads back to the house. And look at the house, you'll see the door open. And that's when she first screams, and really loud, clearly not at the 911 operator, as they would have you believe. She's clearly speaking to someone out there, and she says, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? You know who she's talking to? She's talking to that man right there.
No.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Because she knows he did something. She knows he had that gun, and she knows he did something. But she doesn't seem to really know what yet at this point, because you don't see her say anything, you know, and then she calls him, you fucking asshole. And apologize for my language, but I'm trying to quote to you exactly what was said on that day, on that phone call, which I urge you to listen to. But it's at the 2 minute and 40 second mark. Her voice, her inflection, everything changes, because at that moment, she has now seen Jermaine Bass, and she's seen him holding her boy.
Bear boy.
She says, that man was playing with his freaking gun. I don't know what the fuck happened. Again, I don't know what the fuck happened. She doesn't know. All she knows is that her husband, of all people, had a gun, and suddenly gunshots are going off, and he walks out with his son in his arms.
Yeah.
And that's when there's a realization, because you'll hear that now suddenly she starts to get some more specific. My babies, my kid been shot. She doesn't say my kids, she said my kid. Singular. At this point in time, she probably doesn't even know Jayla shot up there. But now she's seen JJ. Bring the ambulance. My son is bleeding. My son. Again, she doesn't say Jayla. Why? Because at this point in time, she was outside, and she sees her husband come out, and he's got the boy. She doesn't even know what's going on with the little girl. She doesn't realize that her daughter is dying upstairs. This is Shirley's testimony, ladies and gentlemen. Unfiltered, raw, emotional, at the time, the most trustworthy statement you could possibly get from an individual when they're in the experience at the moment going through it. And what is she telling you, ladies and gentlemen? She doesn't know what's going on, but she knows something bad is happening in her house, which means she's not there, she has nothing to do with it, she's not involved with it. The phone disconnects. You hear it come back in. If you listen, you can tell there's an echo. She's inside that house at that point. She yells at him, leave him alone, don't touch him. She says, I swear to God, if my son died, and you can hear all this on that phone call. And yes, she's very rude to the 911 operator, but remember, she's now realizing that her son is shot in the head. She doesn't know what's going on, she doesn't understand it, but she knows that that man right there, Jermaine Bass, has something to do with it. That man playing with his freaking gun. You know, Ms. Schlemmer wants to talk about how uncooperative Ms. Bass was. Well, what did the detective tell you? On the day this happened, while her daughter is lying there dead, and her son is in a coma in the hospital, she spends an hour talking to him about this. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. This woman, whole world has just exploded. Everything has exploded. The husband, the man she's in love with, is now being investigated or believed to have shot and killed her daughter, and her son, who could potentially die, is there in the hospital. Her mind is reeling. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to sit here and talk about her cooperation. She spent an hour. Detective or Corporal Gabo told you, she spent an hour talking to me. And he went back the next day and talked to her for even longer. And Ms. Schlemmer wants to call her uncooperative? You know what uncooperative is? Is lying to police. Who do we know did that? Mr. Bass. She wants to get up here and tell you, well, he was cooperative that whole time. No, he wasn't. How is lying to police cooperative? You heard Corporal Gabo, he based our investigation on what he said happened.
Did he lie to the police?
They weren't looking for a whodunit or who's the other person that might have done this. He told them I did it. But it was an accident. So that's how they're basing their investigation. So again, remember we talked to you earlier, we don't have to prove motive, okay? And I think you all understood that, and we went through that in some great detail. But I told you, you're going to get some evidence that something was not right. And I think you heard it. You heard it from China. China Gadsden, who got up here. And she told you that she was being aggressively tailgated as she left Ruth's Chris. And that's why we presented all that evidence to you, to show you and to corroborate what China said to you. Because we know that that man left those kids alone, got in his Nissan Titan truck. We see him pulling out from the residence. We see him driving down Fletcher towards the interstate. We have his phone records that show his phone going all the way down to West Shore, where he's there for a couple of hours. Not sure what he's doing there, but he's there, waiting until Shirley leaves, at which point he aggressively tailgates her.
What does that have to do with the kids, though?
She doesn't know it's him. The only evidence of anyone being aggressive, acting abnormal that night, is that man seated right over there. Not Shirley. How was Shirley? Shirley was fine. She was just normal. She was happy. It was her sister's birthday. We were all out at dinner. The only person with any sort of aggression that night was that man seated right over there. And we proved to you, ladies and gentlemen, that. And we don't have to prove to you motive, but something was not right. He was clearly upset with Shirley for some reason. You don't follow your spouse to a dinner, wait outside, and then aggressively tailgate your spouse is leaving the dinner, and then get up in front and stop him from driving anywhere, and then go up and accuse him of drinking. You don't do that unless there's something very, very wrong.
But China said he wasn't upset.
Jermaine Bass took that anger home and unleashed it on his children.
What?
Stop the cap.
No. Whatever. He doesn't have evidence of that,
Whether
but
to
it's
punish
fine.
Shirley Bass, or for whatever reason, we don't know, but he took that anger out and he put it into his children.
Nah. No.
Again, zero physical evidence to suggest Shirley Bass had anything to do with this. In fact, everything seems to indicate the opposite. You see her behavior, you see her franticness after this happens. You hear that 911 call. I'm telling you right now, listen to that 911 call. That is raw, that is pure, that is when a person is experiencing the moment. And you can tell she doesn't know what's going on.
You can
She
tell.
is frantic and scared.
What does the
But few
evidence show?
moments that she says anything that you can tell that she knows something happened, is she is accusing that man right there. What the fuck is wrong with you?
It's not what happened.
You know, Shirley was the one trying to attempt to get help for her kids. We know Mr. Bass had his phone with him because he made a phone call. While Shirley's out there going, get that ambulance here, send an ambulance. Is Mr. Bass calling 911? And Ms. Leonard says, well, Shirley was doing that. How does he know what Shirley's doing? She was out there. She was outside. She was outside trying to find a man to help her. Someone who could give her a phone so she could call 911. Most likely because she was too terrified to go back in the house, not knowing what's in there.
Yeah.
So she finds a man who helps her, gives her a phone and calls 911. And what is he doing with his phone? He's calling his mom. He's not calling for help for his children who've just been shot. Is that what a father does?
Objection, Your Honor, improper argument.
Sustained.
This was an accident. I think the first thing you want to do is call and get some help. Certainly not put your gun away neatly and close the drawer and call mom. There were 4 people in that household. Jayla's gone, sadly. JJ, Shirley, and Jermaine are in there. And I've shown you, I believe, and proved to you that Shirley could not have done this. She is excluded from the DNA on that gun. She never touched that gun. At least not the grip or the trigger. Physical evidence does not connect Shirley in any way to this case. Her behavior afterwards is typical of a person who's just gone through a serious traumatic event. What's not typical was the behavior of the father, of Jermaine. So the only other question is, Jermaine or JJ? Well, remember, don't ever forget this, the father is the one who admitted he shot that man. And that's why Ms. Reeder spent so much time with that crime scene investigator to talk about the angles and everything like that. To show you, ladies and gentlemen, that that shooting came from off the bed. And we know JJ was shot on the bed. And then also ask yourself this, two people, right? Those two, JJ shot himself in the head? That doesn't make sense. But again, no evidence of close range firing. The angle from which those shootings shows that the shooting came from off the bed. This was not JJ. JJ had nothing to do with these shots. JJ was innocently laying there with his sister when that man walked in and brutally shot them both. That's what happened.
No buying it.
It's so simple. It's right there in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. And you can pick apart a medical examiner's report of up or down.
I'm going to object, Your Honor. Improper argument, denigrating the defense.
Sustained.
You can look at little things like that, but when we don't forget and don't miss the biggest stuff in this case. The strongest, most compelling, biggest piece of evidence. And that is the statement from Jermaine Bass on that night and the statement from Shirley Bass on that night. Look at that physical evidence, and you will know that these shots came from off that head. That excludes JJ. No DNA of Shirley, that excludes Shirley. That leaves that man right there, and guess what? That man admitted he did it. Very simple. This is not a complex case.
It's not simple at all.
There's no doubt whatsoever that on that night, on August 29th, 2022, Jermaine Bass, who told you he did, told those deputies that he did, that Jermaine Bass shot and killed his own daughter, Jayla Bass, and tried to shoot and kill his son. That, ladies and gentlemen, is murder in the first degree, premeditated, because look at the placement of those shots. Ms. Reeder showed you that. There is a picture of Jayla Bass, and you can see those 3 shots, well placed.
No.
All within a very close range.
I don't want to see that.
An 8-year-old boy could do that? Really? Sure, an 8-year-old boy can fire a gun, but with that kind of precision and accuracy? That takes someone who knows how to fire a gun. You know, we did introduce a lot of evidence of a lot of other bullets. That's to show that Mr. Bass knows guns. Yes, there's clips, holsters, there's all sorts of stuff. There's that one thing that has all the bullets in it. We presented that evidence to you, ladies and gentlemen, and proved to you and show you this was not an accident. This man knows guns and knows how to fire guns. He knows how to aim that gun. And he put those 3 bullets into the head of his daughter. And he put that 1 bullet into his son, who still has to deal with that 1 bullet. That's first-degree murder. That's attempted first-degree murder. And that is aggravated child abuse. Both counts. It's not only premeditated murder, it's felony murder, because he is guilty of aggravated child abuse for what he did to those children, and that makes it felony murder. And I'm convinced, ladies and gentlemen, that when you go back there, use your common sense. Think about what is the evidence to best rely on. The state has no doubt that you will return a verdict for guilty as charged on all 4 counts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, redirect. What do y'all think about the redirect? Still a lot of uncertainty. Again, we have to look at reasonable doubt. What's reasonable? Is it reasonable that he did this? I don't know. Even looking at the evidence, it doesn't make sense. I don't think the state proved that he was the one that did it. Now, he said he did it. That's going to be a problem. So there's that part. But why would he do that? Why? It doesn't make sense to me. Yeah, let me know what y'all think in the comments and in the chat too. Let's go ahead and get into the verdict. Here we go. That's Jermaine's mom back there. I don't know who the rest of these people are to him. A lot of these are probably law students. I know some of them, there were some of the witnesses were seated on this side too.
All right.
All right, be seated. My understanding is you all have reached a verdict. Is that right?
Yes.
If you would hand the verdict form to the bailiff for me.
She sounds so excited.
Thank you. All right, the verdict form is in order. If you would publish the verdict and poll the jury, please.
Yes, ma'am. State of Florida versus Jermaine LaVonda Bass. Case number 22 CF 011717A. Trial Division 3. Verdict form. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 1, murder in the first degree. The defendant is guilty of murder in the first degree, Jayla Bass, as charged. And during the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use any weapon or firearm? Yes. Did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Did the discharge cause death of the victim? Yes. 12 of the 12 of us find the killing was premeditated murder.
Wow.
12 of the 12 of us find the killing was premeditated murder and felony murder. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 2, aggravated child abuse. The defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 3, aggravated child abuse. Jermaine J.J. Bass. The defendant is guilty of aggravated child abuse as charged. We, the jury, find as follows as to count 4, attempted murder in the first degree. Jermaine J.J. Bass. The defendant is guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. Jermaine J.J. Bass, as charged. And during the commission of the offense, did the defendant personally carry, display, use, threaten, or attempt to use any weapon or firearm? Yes. Did the defendant actually possess a firearm? Yes. Did the defendant discharge the firearm? Yes. Did the discharge cause great bodily harm to the victim? Yes. So say we all, dated this 27th day of February 2025, juror number 1, foreperson of the jury. Juror number 1, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 2, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 3, are these your true and correct verdicts? Juror number 4, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 5, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 6, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 8, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 9, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 10, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 12, are these your true and correct verdicts?
They are.
Juror number 14, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes.
Thank you. I can't see.
You missed
I
one.
can't.
I was 12. You missed one.
You missed 11.
11, excuse me. Juror number 11, are these your true and correct verdicts?
Yes, they are.
Thank you.
And juror number 12, are these your true and correct verdicts?
I can't see.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I know that you have spent a considerable amount of time and effort today deliberating on this case, and I cannot thank you enough for that, as well as your patience and with us and hard work all week. As you've now seen, it is why we need people like you who respond down with the jury service summons to handle the cases and the disputes that the parties cannot resolve among themselves. So you are essential and a true backbone to our system of justice, and I cannot tell you how much you are appreciated by me personally, as well as all
I'm
of the
surprised they're
judges here in
showing
Tampa, Hillsborough
everyone
County.
back here.
That
Wow.
much being said, all of my constant admonitions about not talking about the case are obviously lifted. You can do as much speaking about the case as you would like to, or discussion, or investigation, or whatever you'd like to know in addition to what you've heard during the course of this trial. I do hope if you share your trial experience with others, it does have a somewhat positive spin, so that when they get a jury service summons, they too will come down to the courthouse, as you all have this week. to serve the citizens of Hillsborough as you all have. I spent a considerable amount of time as a trial lawyer before I became a judge. I loved to talk to jurors after cases to see how the presentation went and what questions jurors had or didn't have, or just talk about deliberations in general. That option is open to you. Of course, you're not required to do that.
It's gonna be rough
but
in
if you
jail
wanted
for
to
him
talk
too.
to any of the lawyers, or if you have any feedback for me, let the bailiffs know, and they'll tell you not only you have my contact information, you're welcome to get back in contact with me, or if you want to come back in and speak to any of the lawyers about their cases, you're welcome to do that as well. But officially, your jury service is concluded with the thanks of both parties and with the thanks of all of my colleagues, the judges here in Tampa, Florida. So thank you very much for your service. Maybe we will see you down here next time you get a jury service summons, but thank you for all of your efforts this week. Have a great rest of your week and weekend.
All rise.
Yeah, his life, he knows his life is over. I think he probably knew for a while.
All right, have a seat.
Yeah.
Any reason not to proceed with sentencing at this time?
Well, Judge, yes, we'll be filing motions, and also there would need to be a score sheet for the other counts, so I would request sentencing be set off.
All
They're
right.
gonna
And I also
they're gonna
need to
appeal, I
discuss that
think.
very briefly as well with Mr. Bass about a PSI.
All right, sure.
That's fine, Judge. I had not prepared a score sheet. Obviously, I didn't know what the verdict would be or what if we could do lesser, so I just didn't need to prepare it. And I know, Judge, in speaking with the family, I believe at least one of them would like to say something, so I know if we can just maybe have another date.
All right.
This whole thing was just terrible, man. Absolutely terrible.
This will be my, in case this affects either side's sentencing request. This will be my last jury trial. I am retiring.
Oh, congratulations to the
effective in a
judge.
couple of weeks for
Nice.
another opportunity that I have to go into private practice that I'm going to take up. So I won't be the sentencing judge if you want to defer it. But I know that any replacement would be reading the trial transcript as well as familiarizing himself with the testimony that's being conducted. So if that weighs into your decision making about whether or not you want to proceed today, just take that into consideration and telling me what your preference is.
Can we do it before you leave, Judge? Or before your last day on the bench?
We did, yes, and we're waiving PSI, Judge. I have discussed that with Mr. Bass.
All right.
Yeah, she's excited to get up out of there.
Have a score sheet ready by next week for sure. Even potentially by tomorrow if need be.
I'm not.
Oh, you're going to do it tomorrow? Okay.
You're what? Can't do it tomorrow?
But I could definitely by next week, I can have if you have a date next week, I can go ahead and have a score sheet ready and we can proceed with sentencing.
Can you do it on Monday?
I do have open time next week, but I would need time to do motions. Wednesday? What do you have on maybe Wednesday?
Well, if we had proceeded to sentencing anyway, you can always file the motions after that.
That's true. Yes, Judge.
Good.
Monday's fine with the state.
The only problem is I think we definitely want you to be able to hear both, just because you heard the trial. And any post-trial motions that we file are gonna be more complicated if someone's then gonna have to get the trial transcript and review it, you know what I mean?
Do you have time Wednesday?
She said, nah, me.
Thursday afternoon?
What's up,
Maybe
Beat Breaker?
The morning in here with you, or Friday? Is that possible?
Approach the bench for a minute.
So the judge is retiring. Congratulations to her. Looks like there's going to be some motions filed. I'll be interested to see what those are. And as the news comes out, I'll definitely keep you guys updated. Do you think they're going to appeal this decision? I don't know. We'll have to wait and
Go to
see.
courtroom, please. Court's adjourned.
All right.
Go to courtroom, please.
It's most likely going to be his last time wearing a suit like that. Mm-mm-mm. And of course, they're going to take him into custody. And that's his mom finally leaving. Now, he will be back for sentencing, but looks like he held all his emotion to the end. Dang. Said, all right, time to go. Absolutely terrible. Let me know what y'all think about this. Again, we've been asking throughout this entire trial, and specifically now at the end, if the jury made the right decision. Let me know what y'all think. Also in the chat, we had a survey, and it looks like the survey says, when I asked, did the jury make the right decision with the guilty verdict for Jermaine Bass? 61% of you said yes. 39% of you said no. I want to see what y'all think about that in the comments and in the chat.